hate this movie, I can't whistle. The Hunger Games is directed by Gary Ross and it's based on the book by Suzanne Collins. This movie was co-written by Ross and Collins and Billy Ray and stars a ton of famous people. You've got Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, Liam Hemsworth, Woody Harrelson, Elizabeth Banks, Lenny Kravitz, Donald Sutherland, Stanley Tucci, Wes Bentley, Toby Jones, lots of famous people. The Hunger Games takes place in this futuristic nation of Pan Am, where 74 years ago the districts of Pan Am rose up against their oppressive capital. But that did not turn out very well. The rebellion was crushed, and now the capital demands that every year each district is to send 2 teenagers to the capital where they will engage in a battle royale-esque situation. They will basically fight each other to the death. And this movie focuses on the 2 tributes for District 12, the poor district. You've got Katniss Everdeen played by Jennifer Lawrence and Peeta Mellark played by Josh Hutcherson. Now, as soon as this movie and even the book, when that came out, everyone was like just comparing it to Battle Royale, to other different things, and I'm not gonna spend this review talking about how, better one is to the other because, why would I do that? Let's review the movies based on their own terms. Now, I have actually read all the Hunger Games books. I really liked the first one, so I was kind of really looking forward to this back, 2 years ago. And I was really surprised because I actually did really like it. I think this is a very well acted movie. For the most part, it's well written, and I do think it's very well directed. Now, here's the thing about The Hunger Games, though. It is a big blockbuster movie, but the CGI effects in it just really aren't the best. But it's not really a big problem for me because I think the movie knows that it doesn't have that much budget in its visual effects department, so they do the wise thing and don't really show the visual effects shots for too long, so it didn't really bother me that much. Instead, we do get lots of practical things. The production design I thought was very, very good because it feels very grounded in reality. I mean, District 12, I live in a third world country, so District 12 could actually look a lot worse than it does, but from the small amount of time we spend in District 12, I think just the visuals and the production design really give us a sense of what life there is like. The arena that Katniss and Peeta eventually end up in is kind of like a standard arena. I mean, it's just like a really big forested area, but I do think the terrain and the geography is varied enough there to make it kind of still, kind of exciting. I mean, if it were a video game map, it would be like a big kind of standard video game map, but it still looks kind of fun to play in a video game. We don't see too much of the capital in this movie, but I'm actually fine with that because we do see the movie from Katniss's point of view, so we really wouldn't see that much of the capital. But I really do think that like the crazy makeup and costumes that the people in the capital wear kind of say enough about what life there is like as well. And the fun thing about the costumes and makeup and stuff in the capital is that it's so ridiculous, but when you look at the stuff people wear today, it's kind of similar. I mean, like it makes the movie feel like it could happen. Like if crazy enough things happen, it might happen. Now, a lot of criticism was also directed towards how this movie was shot in terms of like the use of shaky cam and whatnot. And I don't know if I just have like a stronger tolerance to the shaky cam because it did not bother me at all in this movie. I did honestly feel like it added to like the disturbing nature of the subject matter, kids killing each other. And I like how the movie obviously takes the side of the tributes, not the capital when they show the action, because if they took the side of the capital, they would be showing this action from like, wide angles and, where you can see all the action. But the fact that they use handheld so often in this movie kind of heightens the scary factor. It shows the action to be really brutal. And overall, this movie really has a lot of realism in its visuals because the cinematography in general has this really gritty look to it, which I really like. This movie is also much more quiet than I remember it being. There are a lot of scenes here where there's no music playing and you really only hear the sounds of the forest and whatnot. Again, you get a sense that you're there with them. You're not someone behind the TV screen watching them. You're really there with them and you feel how scary it is and how, real the danger is. Again, James Newton Howard did the music for this, and I think his score is really good again. A lot of the tracks here have this very folk element to it, which says a lot about Katniss and about District 12. What's interesting also is that the book has the luxury of being told in first person through Katniss's point of view, so you really kind of, get a better sense of what she's like as a character. Here they don't have that luxury, obviously, but they're able to kind of, show her thought process in some scenes when it's just, again, all quiet and you're just watching her, like, track an animal or figure out like a trap that's been laid in the arena. It's really interesting that through the editing and stuff, like we were able to kind of see that. And I also really appreciated how we were able to see what went on behind the scenes of the games. This is a luxury that the book did not have this time because it's all told first person. Here we really get to see kind of like how Haymitch is kind of pulling strings behind the scenes to help out Katniss and Peeta. We get to see what Seneca Crane, played by Wes Bentley, the game maker, is doing to kind of make their lives a living hell. We get to see Caesar Flickerman, played by Stanley Tucci, like actually narrating the games, which was a really, really good touch. And in terms of plot, this movie again is interesting because the games themselves really give the plot its structure and its sense of progression, which is also kind of disturbing because something like this is actually structured, like you're watching the kids train to later beat each other to pieces. And I do like a lot of the characters in this movie also because I feel like they all kind of represent different responses towards this situation. You know, you have Katniss, who obviously does not want to be here at all. All she wants is to, kind of go home to her sister. You have Peeta, who gets it very early on that you just have to play along with this game if you want to survive. Then you have Haymitch, played by Woody Harrelson, who's just jaded beyond belief. You have Effie Trinket, played by Elizabeth Banks, who's just like Stanley Tucci's character in that they're like the culmination of, if you accept this capital culture, whatever, you turn into that. And overall, I really do like how this movie is written because it keeps reminding us that these games can be manipulated by the players also, and you can lie to the people who are, in charge of this game because this is all just strategy. You have to do certain things just to live and to they really just play around with the audience. And at a certain point, you're not sure whether people are lying about their emotions or whatnot. And all across the board, I think the acting is great. I could watch Stanley Tucci and Elizabeth Banks like all day. They're extremely funny and entertaining. Woody Harrelson also is really entertaining, but he also is able to convey this deeper sense of how Haymitch really hates the games and like what those games have done to him, and that he hates the fact that he has to play along, but he knows he has to play along. A lot of people did not like Josh Hutcherson as Peeta, and I personally think he did great because, I don't know, the character of Peeta, for me at least, is really supposed to be this really likable dude, like the kind of guy you watch on a reality TV show. And he really is able to pull that off, I think. Like, he has this inherent likability about him. He really kind of gets people's sympathy early on. But Jennifer Lawrence definitely is the trump card of this movie. Her portrayal of Katniss, I think, is really, really surprisingly complex because she's very equal parts tough and then scared. She's equal parts determined and then lost about what to do in the situation. And I really like how she's really not your typical hero. She's there not to fight the system or anything. She's there just because she happened to volunteer to save her sister, and she just kind of wants to go home. She's kind of selfish in that regard. It's refreshing to see that kind of heroine in a young adult adaptation. Also, thank you, Gary Ross, the director, for not Hollywoodizing this movie at all, because I was surprised when I rewatched it and I realized just how bleak the tone is. Like, the tone of this movie is really, really dark, especially for a young adult adaptation. Even the stuff that happens in the Capitol feels like deliberate satire. Again, a lot of criticism was leveled at Gary Ross for the way he directed like his fight scenes because they were all shaky and stuff. And it doesn't feel like there's any real fight choreography, but I actually think that's kind of the point because for me at least, it's very clear that what Ross wants to show in this movie is that the Hunger Games is disgusting, and like through his way of shooting this stuff, like the fight scenes are very raw, they're very short in that they just kind of beat each other to death and that's it, and I like that. Overall, I think Gary Ross really builds this world really, really well. It's very engaging. It really just gives us enough for the first movie in a series. In terms of my problems with the movie, I think a lot of the characters are also underwritten, especially everyone like at home, like Katniss's mom, her sister, Gale, played by Liam Hemsworth. I mean, we're kind of supposed to care about them, but we really don't, like, at all. And especially also like every other tribute in the arena, who is supposed to at first be kind of fearsome and because they're out to kill each other, but they're really not that scary because they're just kind of cardboard cutout jock characters from high school movies. And even like the supposed main antagonists like Donald Sutherland's President Snow and Seneca Crane, played by Wes Bentley, like they also don't really have much to work with at all. Also Toby Jones, I mean, I don't know why he's here. And partially because of that, there's a large section of the movie that takes place in the arena that kind of just loses its sense of urgency. Like once you realize that a lot of these tributes are just kind of like high school jocks, it kind of loses the danger feeling, and it doesn't really feel like the game makers are out to kill Katniss anymore. But overall, I do think that The Hunger Games is a really good movie, surprisingly. I think it's like the best young adult adaptation things that come out since Harry Potter. Alright, so that's my review of The Hunger Games. Have you guys seen it? What did you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought. Whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.